I didn't understand having a life outside of your job and honoring all of the parts of you and your personality and the things that light you up that have nothing to do with what you get paid to do from 9 to 5 or when you clock in, when you clock out. To me, it's like, what is life if not made in the moments that have nothing to do with our work?
Hey, I'm Hannah, your host of Too Much, Not Enough. After a life-threatening burnout in 2021, I released the brittle version of success that was slowly killing me and built a life that feels as good as it looks. This podcast is for ambitious, soul-led humans ready to stop shrinking and start living big, bold, fully aligned lives. So if you've ever felt like too much and not enough, join me and my guests as we take an unfiltered deep dive into why being the real you was never the problem, and how to create a life your nervous system actually likes. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Too Much, Not Enough podcast. I'm your host, Hannah, and I am so freaking excited that you're here. So often on this podcast, we talk about entrepreneurship, soul-led business, and building a life outside the traditional 9 to 5. That's what a lot of my guests do and how they found their truth and freedom. But here's the real truth. Not everybody wants to or even needs to be an entrepreneur to break the mold and create a fulfilling life. That's why I am thrilled about today's conversation with Odette Ansell. Odette is a Canadian litigator, creator, and host of the podcast Non-Billable Hours. She's a passionate advocate for mental health and balance in the legal profession, and her message is one we all need to hear. You are more than your career or your title. Odette is living proof that even in a traditional job, you can carve out space for creativity, joy, and self-expression. You can honor the multifaceted parts of who you are, because there are a lot of them, and let them thrive. Today, we're talking about how to resist the pressure of supposed to, find what lights you up, and bring your whole self into your life without burning it all down like I did. Let's get into it. Welcome to Too Much, Not Enough. Odette, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Hannah?
So good. I'd love it if you could tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Sure. So my name's Odette. I am a lawyer. I practice insurance litigation in Toronto. I'm senior counsel at an insurance company. I've been doing it for 10 years. And I have a podcast called Non-Billable Hours where I interview other lawyers, former, current, about life as a lawyer, and recently got into kind of trying to expand my comfort zone. And that is how you and I met, Hannah. We met at a cold plunge, my very first open water cold plunge in Lake Ontario. I think it was like November or something like that.
Was it? Yeah, probably.
I think so. It was like October, November. So I've gotten really into like that whole like sauna cold plunge culture. I'm all about just like encouraging lawyers and professionals to be exactly who they are and then making the world meet them where they're at.
My gosh, I love that so much. And we're going to have so much to talk about on that note. But I did want to go back. I'm so glad you brought up where we met, because as you were talking, that's exactly what came to my mind. It was a small little group. And at the time, like I was really putting myself out there by going to this, especially at the time in the morning, because like ask anyone in my life, getting up that early did not used to be my vibe at all. But I was like, I just have to start going to things like this. And I'm so glad I did, because like so many beautiful people there, which is not surprising given that like Habit was organizing it and their kind of like vibe and ethos and everything and who they attract. But I just remember your energy was so gorgeous. And I was like, oh, this is just something to pay attention. You know, when something comes into your orbit and you're like, this is something to pay attention to, and you like clock it at the time and you don't know where it's going to go. But it was so nice that we connected. And then I found out you had a podcast. And as I was launching my podcast, being able to connect and chat, and you've just been so gorgeously supportive. So I want to thank you so much for that.
I can literally feel my face getting redder. That is very, very kind of you. Everything you just said, I felt the exact same way about you. I just remember I'm not great at going up to strangers and introducing myself in like a one-on-one context. And I don't know if it was like we had just jumped into a lake or what it was. Yeah, like the energy of the people around us. But I just remember coming up to you and like chatting with you, and you were so sweet and so kind. And we just had the nicest conversation. And I literally walked away from that because my partner Angie was there too. And I walked away from that being like, I want to be friends with her. Like,
I felt the same.
And you're just like, that's not the last time I'm going to see that person. I'm going to make sure of it.
Yes.
And I think what you're doing with your podcast is so incredible. I love your message. I love tuning in and watching you. Every time I watch you, I feel like inspired and excited, but also like calm at the same time. Seeing you like launch it and being at your launch party and everything. I've known you for so little time. It feels like that I'm like so proud of you. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes total sense because that's how I feel about you. And I'm just like,
thank you.
When those people come into your life, you do have to pay attention. And I mean, I think it's a combination of making the effort because it doesn't just happen, but also knowing that like people are put into your life, you know, as they say, for a reason, a season, and like that it just starts to make sense as it happens. And I also think as I've shown up more online, it has become so much more clear to me how important it is to cheer everyone else on. Like I used to be kind of stingy online, I think, with my likes or with my comments or with my dropping into people's DMs. And that was partly from a place of like fear. I think it's like the digital version of, like you said, going up to someone and introducing yourself and thinking that you're kind of like imposing. But also for me at the time, I hadn't been showing up online a lot. So I didn't understand how lonely it can feel to just talk into the void and not have any feedback. Even though people are receiving your content, you're like, does anybody hear me? I don't know. And I was like,
does anybody care?
Does anyone care? Am I crazy to just be talking into this mic? Once I started doing it and was like, and any singular person who said something nice to me or dropped into my DMs is like the most wonderful human ever. And it means so much. I'm like, oh, that's why we hit the like button every time we leave a comment, we drop into people's DMs to say, keep going. I love what you're doing, because you can't assume that other people are doing that.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that you're not doing it for the accolades, but knowing that it's reaching people matters.
Yes.
You're not doing it for the praise, but you are doing it to reach people. And so when people confirm, it's like the red receipt on an email. I'm like, got your message. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for putting this message into the world. And I think ever since I started creating my podcast, I've realized how important it is to give that to others, because so many people go through life not knowing the impact they've had on others until it's too late.
Yes.
And I think we all need to be very generous with our love and our support. And I have seen with people like you and some of my friends and some of the people I've met through the podcast, even like old friends from Laurier. I have this old friend from Laurier, Michael Onabalu, he makes music. He is like #1 commenter, liker, fire emoji, heart emoji, hands, like constantly just showing love to everyone in his life, regardless of the last time you saw him, regardless of the last time you guys had a one-on-one chat. And I'm trying to be more like that because I see what an impact those people have on me, and I want other people to feel that love too. I love that we're kind of like going kind of lockstep through this journey. We kind of started around the same time. We're going through a lot of the same growing pains around the same time.
Yes.
But I agree. It is really important to show that love, because we don't have a limited amount of love. It's not a scarce resource. The more you give away, it's not like you have to guard it and, guard yourself and keep your boundaries. But giving love away doesn't mean you have less to give away. It actually feels like you have more to give away.
That's totally it. That is totally it. The more you give, the more it flows freely into your life. And that is like, of anything I've seen over the past couple of years of me like starting to show up in life in a real, intentional and vulnerable and like scary way.
Oh yeah.
The more you show up in your authentic, aligned nature, the more you give freely of that which you have, the more capacity that then builds to hold more of that coming into your life. Like it is just like a self-fulfilling cycle, which is beautiful to watch. And this is also a very nice reminder that if you out there listening are online and you're watching something that really resonated with you and you're thinking, oh, I don't need to say anything because they probably have tons of people telling them how well it's landed. I can promise you they probably don't. Even if they have a lot of followers, it is an illusion that a lot of followers means that people are telling them that they hear them or that it connects. And I love how well you put that. It's not about accolades. It's not about being told how amazing you are. It's just simply being like, I'm also a human who feels that. And you're like, oh my gosh, great. I'm not alone.
Yeah. Hey, I saw this like little heart emoji. We should be conscious that a lot of that is directed at the people in our lives, in our circles that are trying things and that are putting themselves out there and putting themselves in these places where you know that they're not maybe super comfortable or super experienced, because that's really scary. And your support means the world to people when they're trying something new, right?
Oh my gosh, it's huge. And I know it can sometimes be hard. I know I've definitely experienced watching people go after what they want when I was on the sidelines and when I wasn't ready to do that yet or didn't yet have the confidence or courage. And sometimes it can feel like, and it's so normal if you have this moment of like envy or jealousy or like, oh, if they get it somehow, maybe I can't have it. While that's not true, it is a real feeling that can happen. And like once we push through that and break through that, and like you said, give more freely of our love because it never runs out. And it doesn't mean that if you're cheering this person over here on who's doing the thing you want to do, doesn't mean that it's not going to happen for you. In fact, the opposite is probably true.
Yeah.
The more you cheer them on, the more likely it is it's going to happen for you.
It's true. And the more that you show people support, I feel like it's kind of like it almost spurs you on too. In that little bit of selfishness, like there's a little bit of selfishness in every good act. I know that when I send a message of support to a creator I really like, or tell a friend they did something amazing or whatever, it makes you feel good. Like it really truly does like light your heart up and put a little pep in your step. And I think like that shouldn't be discounted too, is like how it makes you feel giving that positive affirmation or encouragement.
Yes, totally agree. Okay. Well, I would love to chat more about non-billable hours and what motivated you, what inspired you to start the podcast and have these conversations around identity and fulfillment, both within and outside of work.
That's a good question. You know, I was about, I guess, 9-ish, 8.5, 9-ish years into my career as a lawyer. And I've always worked in litigation, so it can be super stressful, super high stakes sometimes. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. It can be a very stressful career. Law, I don't think it's any secret that it can be, you know, it can wear on you. And I was kind of feeling the wear. It was like early 2024. And I was sitting at a second cup that doesn't exist anymore with my partner who works in the creative world. I'm at his photo studio right now. You can probably see the seamlesses behind me. He's a creative. And I was feeling bogged down with the fact that I didn't really know who I was outside of being a lawyer. For so long, it was my whole childhood, my whole university career was, I'm going to be a lawyer. And that's kind of what I hung my hat on as a person. And then once I became an articling student, once you're a shiny new lawyer in downtown Toronto, like that's all you want to tell people. You've worked really hard to get there. You should be proud of yourself. Like no matter what you do in the world, you should be proud of it. I kind of felt like not an emptiness, but almost just kind of like this gray kind of cloud around my personal identity. And I sat with it for a long time. And so I remember it was like a really cold, like January day. And I was sitting at a second cup with Andrew and I looked at him and I was like, I want to find a way to kind of like reignite my passion for my job, but also in a way that's like creative, that's like only mine. And I had really gotten into listening to podcasts in general. I looked at him and I just kind of a light went off. I was like, I think I want to start a podcast. And of course, him being the person he is like, you absolutely should do that. I think it's a wonderful idea. And like 3 days later, this microphone showed up at our door, courtesy of my partner. And I was like, okay. Yes, I got to put my money where my mouth is. Because when it's just an idea, it's just an idea. And it's not scary. It's exciting because there's no risk. There's no potential of failure when something is just an idea. Once that piece of hardware shows up or you put out your first episode or whatever the case may be, there's a risk involved. And like, I think you use the word vulnerability. There's a vulnerability involved. But I was like, I owe this to myself because I don't want to be 50, 60, 70, being like, what if I would have done that in my 30s? What could have been? So that was the reason. And so I just started thinking, okay, I want to make a podcast that lawyers can relate to. What are the kinds of things that I know people in our field struggle with, but no one talks about? And that's kind of what prompted my first, I think I had written like 6 or 7 episodes and recorded like 4 or 5 before I had the backbone to actually post one, because they were all solo at first and they weren't video. They were just all solo audio.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was the birth of Non-Billable Hours.
That's amazing. And what did you find initially were the things that came up for you that were like the things that aren't talked about that you felt were important, the things that are being kind of hidden, shoved down, or that like all of a sudden, because that's part of why Too Much Not Enough came about, because I started being honest with my story of how I was struggling. And then so many other people were like, me too, me too, me too. And I was like, wait, how are we so silly as humans that we think other people are not having the same experience as you are, as if like you're this like unique person out of billions of people having the struggles that you're having? So what were those themes that started arising?
No, I love that you say that. I think that's just what it was. It was just looking inward and being like, what am I struggling with? And so some things that I found was I've always been a big proponent of therapy and taking care of your mental health. And therapy, it doesn't necessarily mean sitting down with a psychotherapist once a week, although I friggin' love my therapist. She's an angel. I've been seeing her since I was an articling student, and I just am in love with her life. So I'm very lucky, but it doesn't even necessarily mean that. It could mean journaling. It could mean meditation. It could mean like some sort of taking care of your brain and your mental health. Because I've really struggled with that early on as a lawyer, and it's something that I'm always working on. It's no secret that in the legal industry, like mental health, alcohol addiction, these kinds of things play a bigger role, but no one talks about it until, unfortunately, for some people, it's too late, or it really has made its way into their life in a way that now they're suspended from the Law Society or they're in legal trouble. So that was one thing that I really wanted to get across. I think I have a few episodes on therapy and why it's so important. Another one I found was financial literacy, because I find a lot of lawyers, professionals in general, for some people, I was really surprised when I went to law school, interviewing at a big firm is their first real-time interviewing. It's their first real job. Maybe they came from quite a privileged family. They didn't have to work in high school, didn't have to work in university, so this is their first time having to go out into the world and get a job. And then all of a sudden, if you're, articling at a Seven Sister, you're making a lot of money, you don't know what to do with it. You've got student debt, but then you've also got keeping up with the Joneses, and I need to have the fashion and the car, and I need to go for drinks every night. And I certainly didn't know how to manage my money as a new lawyer. I didn't know what investing was. I didn't understand why it was so important to get your debts paid off as soon as you can. So these are the kinds of things that I just started writing about and researching and kind of reflecting on, and then realizing like there's a lot to talk about just on these few things. And then the last kind of big theme that I really thought other people might want to talk about is, I think you touched on it, having a life outside of your job and honoring all of the parts of you and your personality and the things that light you up that have nothing to do with what you get paid to do from 9 to 5 or when you clock in, when you clock out. Because to me, it's like, what is life if not made in the moments that have nothing to do with our work?
Yes. And I think you made this point when you first started talking about it, like if you have wanted to be a lawyer since you were a kid, and then you go to university and then you spend all this time learning about it, and then you go into your articling, it's hard for it not to become your whole identity, because you have spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and probably a lot of anxiety on creating this and chasing this dream. And so it wouldn't be surprising that in any sort of traditional career, whether you were a lawyer, a doctor, or anything that you've chased for a long time, becoming your identity and then you getting the thing that you want, and you're maybe in a job and you're like, wow, okay, this is great. I'm making money. I'm doing the thing I've been dreaming about doing for years and years. Oh, wait, who am I?
Yeah. Oh my God. That's it.
Like,
who am I?
Who am I?
Oh my God.
I was this person working towards this dream for so long. Now I had this dream. Who am I? And I don't think that this is unique at all to being a lawyer or being a doctor, but because that requires so much for you to give so much of yourself to get there, of course that makes sense. And so to have the ability to understand that that's normal, that you get to that point and then go, who am I? Because that can undo you just in that. You think, well, I got what I wanted. Why am I not happy? Or why am I not satisfied or anchored or settled? That can be scary.
It is. And it is such a theme that I think every single person I've spoken to so far has said in one form or another, because you absolutely are right. It's like you pretty much donate your life to getting this role, this career in some way, shape, or form. Like I was at a wedding in Tofino on this beautiful beachside resort studying for the bar exam in my hotel room. Everyone else was out having a bonfire for the bride's bachelorette, and I was literally making my index, for the bar exam. So it does take sacrifice, and it takes time and tears and all these things. But I think you're right. It's definitely not unique to lawyers. I've had non-lawyers reach out to me. I have, a friend who's a pharmacist. I have people who quit the law and are doing other things now, but you never get rid of that part of you that is like, I put so much into this. Who am I outside of this? And that's something that I really wanted to be like, you're not alone. A, you're not alone. And B, there are ways. Your identity isn't a given. It's always changing. You can form it. You can shape it. You can ignite it. But you have to do that. No one's going to come and do it for you.
I love that. The you have to do that part is like, I think so important for us to understand, because I think a lot of people understand that from like a logical point of view of like, you have to make the effort to make connections. Like we were talking about at the very beginning, you have to make the effort to find out what your identity is outside of work, or if you want it to change or shift. But we get a bit afraid of the effort that it takes to do that, the uncovering, the excavating, the maybe looking yourself in the face and being like, either A, I don't know if I want to be a lawyer anymore, or B, I definitely want to be a lawyer. This is absolutely still my passion, but I don't want it to be my whole identity.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that journey for you, where you were sitting there being like, who am I outside of being a lawyer? And where has that taken you to?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I guess early on, when I was an articling student and a new lawyer, I got some not ill-intentioned, but just bad advice. And I think I've talked about it on the podcast that I had between undergrad and law school. I didn't get into law school the first time I applied. And so I had this like gap year. I worked at a university. I worked at Starbucks, which is like still my favorite job, barista. Love it. Oh my gosh, like my heart. I was good, but I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get into law school. I want like a passion project. So I started a food blog. And it was called The Only Planet with Chocolate. And I
love that name.
Right? I was like, I loved it. So I would either like bake something or cook something or share recipes with friends. I met some friends through it. And then I remember getting into law school, and someone in my life who's no longer in my life said, yeah, but you're not going to still keep that like little food blog, are you? Like, you're going to get to law school and people aren't going to take you seriously. And I deleted it. It doesn't exist anymore. I am so sad. I'm so ashamed for a lot of reasons. Number one, like, how dare I let someone do that? But number two, like, who knows where it could have gone? Because I really did love it. And I remember having a girlfriend, her name's Victoria from Laurier, tweet at me and saying like, no more food blog. And I was like, no. And at that moment, my heart sank, because I was like, oh man, going back to like your message is reaching people, you just don't know it. So that was such a pivotal moment in me being like, okay, if I want to be taken seriously in law school and as a lawyer, I have to shed every part of me that isn't serious. When Elle Woods wants to go to Harvard and her mom's like, it's boring and serious and you're none of those things. I felt like I had to be that girl that was like dowdy and gray and serious. And that's just kind of how I approached it through law school, through articling, through the first part of my career, until I went through like a huge life change. I went through a big breakup. I decided that the life I was living, I wasn't happy in any way, shape, or form. No one's fault but my own. But I needed to make a big change. And I realized that if I'm gonna not reinvent myself, but if I'm going to reignite old parts of me that have been dead and dormant for so long, sorry, I'm going to cry, that have been like dead and dormant for so long, I'm just going to fucking commit to it. Like, I'm just going to give her, because I spent so long being told things like, you got to be good at golf because you're going into law. And so many things happen on the golf. Never fucking needed to golf a goddamn day in my life, Hannah. Can I tell you? I've been doing this 10 years. I've been invited to like 2 golf tournaments that I've politely declined both times, and it has not impacted my career one friggin' bit. But let me tell you how many days I spent hating my life on a freaking golf course before thinking that I needed to be good and love it. And so I just said, you know what, if I'm going to bring back me, I'm going to do it in every way. And that includes bringing back every single part of me that has nothing to do with what I'm doing with my career or not. Because there was a time in my life where I didn't know if I was going to ever get into law school. And then what would life look like? And so I think I just owe it to me as a little girl to be like, you didn't want to be boring when you grew up. What happened? And I read this thing the other day more recently that was like, anytime you want to do something, think about your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. And if it's something that you would dream of or it's something you would regret not doing, you owe it to both of those versions of yourself to try.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I've seen that as well.
It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful because those are just like, you are living the life now that those 2 bookend versions of yourself like are going to thank you for, basically. Yes. You can do that one of 2 ways. You can fit in with the shoulds and how you're supposed to do things and let yourself die slowly inside, which, I mean, it's funny, in a completely different, book, I have the same story of just like, I should be doing things like this, and this is how I should be successful, and how I should be giving of myself in a relationship, and how all of the shoulding all over myself and slowly withering away inside, and then wondering why my hair is falling out, and why I have digestive issues, and why my anxiety is just out of control, and being like, maybe it's because I need to take this supplement. And then realizing, no, actually it's because you came here, and for those of us who believe this, came here to this planet with a contract, with a soul contract, to do something, to be yourself. Most of us were that when we were little, when we were those 8-year-olds or 5-year-olds or 4-year-olds, and then the world piled on top of us. And I think part of just like the journey of life is figuring out, do I have the courage to strip back those layers and become who I always wanted to be, make my 8-year-old self proud and make my 80-year-old self proud. And I'm so, so happy that you did that. And I'm also so happy because I can sit here obviously being like, as an entrepreneur who sets my own schedule and doesn't really have rules in the traditional corporate sense, do this, do that, like be yourself, dress however you want, say what you want, and don't worry. And while it has definitely taken a lot of inner work and a turmoil to be able to say the things that I now say on the internet, I came at it from a different container, from a different set of expectations. And so I love that you are saying this as someone who people can look at, who does have a more traditional career, but still saying that this stuff is still important.
It is. And just because you came at it from a different container doesn't make it any easier. I am so impressed with just how unapologetic you are about what you're about. It doesn't feel like you're holding it back for fear. You know what I mean? Like once you let fear start to take its hold on you, like that's when you shrink. And I just love seeing you like blossom and do your thing and explore these parts of you that you're trying to grow and expand and have ready for whatever's next. And it's hard no matter where you come at it from.
Correct.
It's never an easy journey. So you should be so proud.
Thank you. I'm obsessed with this love fest that we have going on here, by the way.
I'm obsessed with you. So.
Same. And that's the thing, the fear here, like where you just said that, like letting the fear take hold. I want to be so abundantly clear. And I think, Odette, you'll agree with me here. We haven't done these things and stepped into these versions of our lives because the fear all of a sudden dissipated and it was no longer there to battle. No, we have befriended fear in such a intimate way that we do it with the fear. We move through it. We allow it to move with us and have become discerning in what is true threat and what is perceived threat. And the perceived threat being that if I don't golf and if I'm not good at golf, I will not make it anywhere in my career. That's a perceived threat because it is not actually going to threaten your career.
Right.
Right. And so, but that sometimes in our systems feels like we are going to ruin our careers if we don't do this. And like we were speaking about this before we hit record, but I just spent last week a couple days in Denver at this conference called Living Brave, 1,000 women in a room, absolutely without apology, claiming the lives that they know they are meant for. This summit, this business summit, was kind of dubbed the Burning Man for female entrepreneurs, because women literally showed up in mesh dresses, nothing underneath. Shoshana, who leads this movement, on stage wearing absolutely outrageous outfits. And she has gotten to where she is. She is a multi-millionaire now, and she has gotten to where she is by being nothing like what anyone told her she should be. Anyone who told her, like, you need to look like this to be taken seriously in business, you need to do this in order to succeed, she has said no thank you to every single one of those and reclaimed exactly a big F you, and reclaimed how she believes her feminine success can be. And she has proved without a shadow of a doubt that you can be entirely yourself, as messy, as unfinished, as whatever, and still make massive waves. If that's not proof that we don't need to fit the mold, like, I don't know what is.
That's everything. Like, that's it. I love seeing you like go through that journey on your Instagram, because I was just like, this looks magical. Like, this looks so fun and so freeing and so like safe. And like safe in whatever way, like safe physically, obviously, but safe from like an emotional, sometimes like you can't necessarily wear what you want to wear wherever you go these days.
Correct.
Or most days throughout history. As a woman, as, certain minorities, like there's not that freedom to do what you want to do unapologetically and still be safe from, certain things and certain kinds of people. So the safety and the comfort that exists in a space like that, we need more of that. And I'm so happy that people are building those spaces. And I think it's what you're doing with the podcast as well, is creating a space for people to come in, to feel safe, to talk, to shed layers, to get into it. And the more spaces we have like that, I think the better for humanity overall, because like we need that connection, and you can't connect if your guard is up.
1,000,000%. It's just impossible. You're totally right. You cannot at all. And so we've touched on it a little bit already, but I would love to understand, like, in a more traditional career, like law, or really just corporate settings in general, what does it actually look like in practice to kind of push back against the shoulds of that professionalism to create a career you love? Because you are right. There are definitely certain settings where you cannot show up in a mesh dress and pasties, and that will be acceptable. Like, there are still lines of professionalism that need to be respected. But what can it look like in practice?
I love that you asked this question, because this is really something that I am constantly exploring and trying to deal with. And I think for me, I have found that while I can't necessarily, obviously, sit in court and talk to a judge like I would sitting here talking with you, Hannah, like there's a level of, decorum, there's a level of tradition, there's certain rules I have to follow. So I can't necessarily walk into court or into a mediation or discovery and be personal time Odette, but I can bring parts of her with me. And I'll give you an example. So I think I was telling you, I was in a full day mediation this week, and I was the most junior counsel there, and I'm senior counsel, but I was the most junior at this table. Yeah. And we were mediating with a retired judge. And so it was a big case, and I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to right by my client. But I was sitting on the couch last night with my partner, and I was so proud because the whole day I really truly was myself. And I think that really the position I was taking with my client wasn't necessarily super favored amongst everyone, and people were trying to get me to change my position, but I was truly just myself, and I was frank, and I was nice, and I was respectful. And that carried me through the day, because if I had walked in there like a bulldog, if I had walked in there being someone I'm not, it would have fell flat. It wouldn't have been effective. People would have hated me. If I would have walked in there without respect for the process, the claim, the people there, that would have also not not done it. So it's kind of about like trying to find a way to marry the tradition of my job, which is quite rooted, lawyers have been around for a very long time and our legal system has been around for a long time. And I think it does demand that respect. I have a lot of respect for the profession, but I don't need to walk in being some like stuffy, uptight, angry person. I can walk in with my compassion, with my empathy, being friendly to everyone, treating everyone as though they're a friend, even if we're in adverse positions to each other. So I think just remembering who you are always and remembering why you're there has a lot of effect on how I go about my day-to-day life. And then I also think like sometimes pushing the envelope a little bit and bringing it back to the podcast, like sometimes you're going to be the first that to do something.
Yeah.
And that can be scary, right? You're the first person I know to create a podcast and a YouTube channel, of this type with your somatic healing and your channeling and your energy work. And I don't know anyone else doing that. So for me, looking from the outside in, it's such a novel thing and it's so beautiful. But I think when you're creating it without too many roadmaps, it can be scary. And that's how I felt starting the podcast, because I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't really have anyone to look to for an example. And I was terrified that people at my work were going to find it and what they would think.
Yeah.
And people in my work have found it. I actually had a director pull me aside when I was in the office this week and say, I didn't know you had a podcast. I saw it on LinkedIn, the woman that you shared. And I was like, yeah, Brandy from Texas. She's like, I'm so proud of you. And people have been incredibly supportive and kind. And I'll get a Teams message every once in a while from a different lawyer at my company being like, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I'm like, did such and such tell you? Because I know there's some people that like will spread it and be like, did you know? And everyone's been wonderful. So I think the other thing is just like trusting that the energy you put out will come back to you and you're not going to be punished for being yourself. And if you are, maybe that's not the right place for you. I am so lucky that really the past 8-9 years, like where I am now, the firm I was at before, the first in-house role I had, I've been treated so well. And I feel I have been truly valued for who I am and what I bring to the table. But that's still something that sometimes you kind of have to be brave and just be yourself and hope that that energy will find you,
Beautifully put, because I think there is kind of two ways to go about it. You go find your tribe and then you feel more confident to be yourself, or you be yourself and you attract your tribe. People will start coming out of the woodwork and, it's not right one way or the other. It depends. Sometimes that's just your journey, but it's like the more you can bring of yourself in a respectful way to your work environment, to your work community, the more likely other people are then going to feel like, oh, okay, I can be a bit more myself. And like, I've seen it in the way that my sister leads teams and how she leads with compassion and empathy, and people like, they're like almost salivating for that kind of leadership at work, because they're like, oh my gosh, someone sees that I'm a human. And when we feel more like ourselves and show up more like ourselves, like you were saying to this day of mediation where you came in and you chose to be who you are in your compassion and empathy, I have to imagine also you felt much less of an energy drain. You probably came away from that day feeling like you had capacity, even though it was a long day of work and probably a lot of back and forth and you really had to use your brain a lot. But when you show up as yourself, your capacity begins to expand in a way that you're like, oh, I can handle this. I think often when we burn out, often when we are exhausted at the end of the day, it's not simply just because work sucks or work is like an energy vampire. Yes, that is definitely part of it. But I would hazard a guess that a huge part of it is that you have had a mask on all day and pretended to be someone else on top of your work and therefore cannot keep up.
I feel like you have been a lawyer in another life, because you are... Hannah, like so correct. And actually even like on the couch last night, like I was telling the story about my day and just like, telling my partner, I was like, I'm really proud of myself, like got a good result from my client and I stayed firm. And even when people were pushing back, but I was like, I was myself and it was great. And like, I made friends with the judge and da-da-da. And he's just like, I'm so happy for you. Cause like a lot of times I'm working from home and I'm just like beep boop on my emails and like getting angry emails back and forth. And you're right. That can really really be draining. I have days where I do, for whatever reason, I'll put it this way. I cannot always be my nicest self at work because I go into every situation as me. And sometimes there is that other side that doesn't necessarily feel like being the kindest that day for whatever reason. And I've started to just accept that that's a part of my job. Those days are incredibly exhausting when you do have to put up the wall. When the other lawyer doesn't want to introduce you to their dog during break, which happens. When you just have to like sit there and argue and fight and like, say the same thing over and over and over again and, take personal hits. And it can be exhausting, and that doesn't happen every day. But those days are incredibly draining because I find I'm not able to be myself. And you're right. When you are yourself, when you expand who you are, when you expand the idea of who you are and what you're capable of, it's such an energizing feeling. And you're right. There's some people in the world that are energy vampires. And I think, in our jobs, it's going to be inevitable, especially I work in litigation. It's a conflict. It's all I deal with all day is conflict. So then what's really important to me is outside of my job as well, finding people that give me energy and light me up. And I think that's a really important part too of just being a human in general, is finding people who make you happy.
1,000,000%. Like finding your pockets, because you're totally right. It's not going to be perfect every day. You're not going to start showing up as yourself and then every single day from there forward, it's going to be this kind of easy road. You're going to be met consistently with people who mirror you, who challenge you, who take you off course because you are a human. And that's naturally what's going to happen, is that ability to constantly come back to your center and use the tools that you have and the people that you have in your life who help remind you of that center. And on that note, this is a perfect segue to, I think, our final question, which I wish it wasn't, but you have talked so much about balance and mental health in the legal profession, but just in general. And I think in all professions in the workplace, what are your practices and boundaries that you use to stay connected to that joy, to that creativity, and most importantly, to that authenticity, like both in the office and outside the office?
There's a lot that I think people can do that I have found worked, and there's some things that I'm still trying out. Sometimes it can be the simplest thing that can have a big impact. For example, so many lawyers I know, especially people who work in litigation or anywhere, any profession where you don't always have 100% control of your calendar, right? I know you've worked at places where it's like you're scheduled in for a shift and you're like, shit, I really wanted to have that day off, go spend it with my partner, do this, do that, see my mom, whatever. Now I got to work. And it kind of just hangs over you. So number one is anytime you can take back control of your time is a win. And so what I mean by that is I am a huge proponent of going, just like simple things, going forward in my calendar, seeing typically during the year when I know Andrew and I want to go camping, or when I know that like my girlfriend's cottage weekend is going to happen, or these particular things, like if I'm running a race, like the Friday before, like block those things off. I have to block things off a year in advance sometimes. Like I'm getting booked into April, May, June of 2026. If I don't take control of what my time looks like, someone else will. And I see it in my calendar. I see these weeks where I'm booked into court or, discoveries or things like 3-4 days a week. And I'm just like, that's going to be the week from hell. But for some lawyers, that's every week. So I think having the conversations with your support staff, having the conversation with yourself, because it's not always going to be ideal. I'm going on a cruise next week with my mom. I'm coming back into hearing prep, but I'm not coming back into a hearing. So I was very purposeful about doing my best. It's not always going to look perfect. I would love a 3-week buffer, but I'm not going to have that. And that's okay. Doing the best you can sometimes is good enough.
Yeah.
I find that leaves me time to do the other things that really light my soul up, like taking a 4-day weekend to go portaging with some friends, like taking my mom on a vacation, like visiting my family in Alberta. So I think that controlling your time to the best of your ability is a really important one, because that kind of informs most other things you can do. And then another thing is, and this is a hard one for lawyers, but trying things knowing that you might fail in whatever your goal might be. I really wanted to be a good painter. I went and bought a watercolor set one day and I was like, I just want to be one of those people who can like paint a beautiful watercolor picture after work one day and just unwind and then go make dinner. And I've got this. I suck so bad at it. Like I cannot get past a shitty sunset. Like I can't. And I'm okay with that. But I tried it. And I'm not to say that you need to be good at everything when you start, but like it just wasn't happening for me. And it's not something that I felt the urge to continue pursuing, even though I was bad at it. But that led me to, okay, maybe like something physical, like doing something physical. So that prompted me to take like an 8-week pottery course. And I really loved that. I connected with an amazing group of women. I realized that I really love the time away from like technology and screens and making something. And then that ended and I was like, okay, that was really fun. I don't know if like that's my thing, but I'm glad I did it. And then Andrew and I were walking through Hyde Park last spring and we saw a sign for like the 5K and 8K spring runoff. And I was like, I miss running. I started up running again and some trials and tribulations. I've got a knee issue, but I'm running my first marathon next month. And
that's amazing.
Thank you. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, but I'm very excited. But I don't think I would have been able to get there if I hadn't opened myself up to trying things just to see if they stick. And if they don't, that's okay. And if they stick and you suck at it, it's okay to keep going, even if you quote unquote suck at it. Because ditching that perfectionist mindset to expand who you are, like you've talked about, I think is so key. You cannot open yourself up thinking that everything is going to be perfect all the time. You can be optimistic, but things aren't going to always be perfect in the way you imagine them. And sometimes they might be better than you could have possibly imagined. Sometimes they might not. But yeah, for me, I found that really just like keeping myself open and not having any sort of textbook definition of who I think I need to be because of my job. I kind of like try to put that aside and be like, what do I want to do? What stories do I want to tell in 10 years? What stories do I want to have for my mom when I pick up the phone? What do I want to tell my niece I did in my 30s? All of these things I think are really important to kind of just like reflect and inform the things you do in your everyday life.
Gosh, I love that question of what stories do I want to tell? Especially in the age of social media and everyone getting online and showing little snippets of their life, that question gets a little muddied. But as human beings, we connect through storytelling. That is how we have evolved to the point we are now. And so thinking about what are the stories I want to tell in order to connect with the people I'm meant to connect with in my life, and how and where do I create and cultivate those stories from, I think is such a huge thing. And I loved what you talked about. You made it so clear there of these two things to think about, of taking back control of your time. Because I think especially for those who work in a corporate setting, 9 to 5, and I did that for many, many, many years, there is a feeling of, I don't have control over my own time. I don't have the freedom. And the only way I'm going to get that freedom is if I leave. And that's not true. You can get that freedom. And what you said about looking into the future and planning and blocking off your calendar also applies to entrepreneurs, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs who go 5 years of building their business and they haven't taken a vacation, and almost even more so because you're not encouraged to take a vacation when you're your own boss. You have to. And I started doing that, especially when I was an event planner. I started doing that thinking, if I'm not physically here in the country, I can't take these jobs on. Like, someone may come to me with a 6-month contract, and if I'm away for the live portion at the end of that 6 months, I can't take the contract on. And it was scary. But I knew that if I didn't start putting stuff into my calendar, it was going to be another 5 years and I won't have taken a vacation. And I started doing that. And guess what? People still wanted to hire me because my work spoke for itself. And they were like, you know what? It actually doesn't matter that you're going to be here for the live execution part. We'd really just love you to do all the pre-production planning. And I was like, is someone like, am I on a hidden camera show? This can't be real, especially. A joke? Yeah, in the event industry, you're like, there's no way that they're like cool with you not being there for the actual event. And this has now happened multiple times for me in my life where I've been like, I would love to, but I'm going away. And that has been planned for a year and I'm not changing it. And they're like, okay, we'll figure it out. Because when you get energetically drawn to a job or to a thing, most of the time people have already made their decision about you, and therefore they're going to work around that. Not always, and that's okay. Yeah. But
putting that time in your calendar, so important. And then being bad at things. Do things badly. Perfectionism. It's so fucking freeing. And I think especially when you talk about coming up in professions like law, like medicine, all of that, you have had to be so good and so beyond
as close
good.
to perfect as possible.
Exactly. And so you think that that is your worth. You think that that is the only way that you are worthy and the only way things should be done in life. And I promise you, start doing things badly and look how fun it becomes.
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Just play, right? Just play. Be carefree. Wear a mesh dress. Go hang out in the woods. Do something that like your inner child will be so happy to see you doing, because my mom always says this. She's like, and it's true, it's cliche, but it's true. It's like age is just a number. You're only as old as you feel and only as old as you act. And I think so many of us just let ourselves get bogged down by I'm getting older, or I have a job, or I have kids, or I have a mortgage. Like none of that means you can't just like go out in the woods and blow some bubbles. None of that means you can't just decide you want a deep and delicious cake after dinner on Friday and to watch like The Weekenders on YouTube. Like, done that.
I think it means you need to do that more. Like the more responsibility you have, the more bubbles you should be blowing. That actually is correlated.
God. You need a t-shirt. Like when you get your merch, I actually have your stickers on my laptop, and I can't show you because I'm using my laptop, but I have your Too Much Not Enough sticker on my laptop. But like your next merch round needs to include like the more responsibilities you have, the more bubbles you should blow.
Literally. You know what's funny? I've literally been thinking about merch recently, like in a more serious way. I think that's one of them. I think we just dreamt it up there. Give you a little.
I would love that on like a tote bag or something. I'd wear the crap out of that tote bag, you know?
Regardless, I'm making you a tote bag with that.
Oh, no. I should be making you a tote bag for facilitating this like amazing afternoon of conversation.
Well, honestly, thank you. You're just a dream. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people who have their own podcasts are tend to understand how this works in the flow, but you're a dream to talk to. And we still need to plan our night of like trashy TV and dirty sodas. So that is coming for sure, because
I love that. We can invite like Bianca.
Yes, 1,000,000%. I'm
just like thinking of all the amazing women I met at your podcast launch. And I'm like, we should just invite the girls and let's just have a day.
100% we will. I am so lucky that like I just have this community of insanely cool women, yourself included. So like, thank you.
I don't know if it's luck. I think you're super cool, and I think people love being around you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. You're right. I actually have worked really hard. I remember having this exact moment when my ex and I broke up, and he did not have much of a community to rally around him. The guilt that I felt that I just had all these people in my life showing up for me, and that he didn't have that. Very human thing. And I remember having this moment, and I think even a friend said to me, and they were like, no, but you worked really hard on those relationships in your life. Like those didn't just like magically happen. And so that's actually not guilt to be felt, that like you get to have friends because those friendships have been nurtured over years and years. And you're like, true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a nurturing that happens back and forth in relationships. So
it is. And it's the internal work that you put into it, and all of the emotional maturity and the working on yourself that allows you to be that safe, comfortable person that wants to cheer on others, because they say that like hurt people. Yeah. But like you're never going to get booed by someone who's like where you want to be, right? It's always the people who aren't quite where you are, or like you said, might be a little envious or might not, have too much going on. Like those are the people that tend to like not cheer for you as much. Like I find that the people who cheer are the ones who are happy where they are. And it takes a lot of work to create that internal peace. And so if you've done the work, that's why you have that community and that support around you. And there's no guilt in that. You didn't do anything wrong.
That's a good point. Very good point. Thank you.
My therapist has to tell me that all the time. She's like, guilt, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't hurt anyone.
My partner, like literally the first date I think we ever went on, he's like, oh, guilt is a useless emotion that I no longer feel. He's like, I feel those other emotions. He's like, but I'm done feeling guilt.
Love that.
That's really cool, actually.
I love that. And I remember speaking with him and your family, and I was just like, this girl, she's got all these amazing people around her. Like, you really do, but that's a sign of who you are.
I'm a product too of my parents in the sense that like my parents cheer. Like when you talk about like cheering people on, my mom, she will be the first person in your comments commenting on your post. Friends have said it for years that having my parents on Instagram is like their favorite thing because they're always commenting. My mom, without fail, she is the first person to listen to the podcast when it comes out every week. She's the first person to comment on the podcast. Like she cheers so, it actually makes me emotional that she cheers so fucking loudly. And like, it is one of the reasons that I'm here and I'm able to be doing what I'm doing and able to cheer on others because I see what that means to me. Yeah, it's my mom. Yeah, she's biased. Yeah, she thinks I'm the best thing. But like, she shows up nonstop for the people in her life. Because also what I realized reflecting back is that she takes risks and she knows what it is like to take risks. She worked for herself. She has done different projects. She's currently writing a book. She knows how hard it is to go after your dreams and exactly what you said. The people that you look up to and are where you want to be know what you're going through. And so they're going to cheer you on the loudest.
Precisely. And that I think is something we just all need to keep in mind is like the boos aren't coming from your role models.
No. Don't take advice from someone's life that you wouldn't trade with. Okay, to wrap things up, I would love to do our rapid-ish fire questions.
Yes, I'm so ready.
So firstly, what is something you used to hide about yourself that you now lead with?
I think just like my weird sense of humor. I love to crack jokes. I love to make fun of myself. I have a really good memory, so I have really good recall. So like, this is one thing I'm very proud of is like my ability to like recall something that happened like an hour, 2 hours ago and make it into a joke. And I used to try to like dim that down because I didn't think that like people would enjoy it or they'd be like, oh, who's the girl doing stand up? And now I'm just like, if I think something's funny, I'm going to say it.
Hell yes. And I hope you're the loudest person laughing at yourself and your own jokes.
Right, you
That's
gotta
my
laugh
favorite.
at yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is craving bringing more of their authentic selves to work, but is afraid to show up like that?
That's fair. I would say find good role models that are showing up in different and unique ways, because I think sometimes it is brave to be the first to do something, but it does help a little bit if you see other people doing that. So find people to look up to. They don't have to be older than you. They don't have to be doing exactly what you want to do, but find people who show up authentically and go with it.
Yes. Love that. Love that. Sometimes a little courage in community is very nice. What is something you think the world needs to hear right now?
More I love yous. And it doesn't have to be romantic I love you. And it doesn't have to be I'm in love with you I love you. Just like I've started telling my friends I love you every time I say bye. And just hearing that, obviously you love to hear it from your partner, from your parents, from your family. I think everyone needs to hear I love you more. Everyone needs to know they're loved.
Yes. Oh, and everyone is loved. I love you to everyone out there listening.
We love you.
We love you so much.
We love you.
All right. And finally, where can people get more of you, more of your like delicious energy?
Oh, thank you. Well, if people aren't sick of me and want to listen to my podcast, it's called Non-Billable Hours. It's Non-Billable Hours Podcast on Instagram, also on TikTok, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's Non-Billable Hours Podcast. And then we're on YouTube. If you just type in Non-Billable Hours Podcast or my name, it'll come up. So we're trying out all the avenues and it's a lot, but it's fun.
Oh, don't I know it? Don't I know it? But we will have all of those linked in the description. So easy for you to go check out Odette's podcast. Thank you so much for being here today, Odette. I loved this.
I loved
so
this
much.
And I love you, Hannah.
I love you too.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And I'm excited for our next encounter.
Me too. I'll see you soon.